This video is to show you how to use a spreadsheet to perform the calculations on the class data. So you will get a sheet that looks something like this. It won't be exactly this one. I'm just working with the data that I have right now. Each sheet at the bottom will be one of the 4 solutes, and you will be doing the calculations on all 4. I strongly recommend that you do the calculations for your own data first so that you've been through the process and you have an example of the process that you can refer to when you're doing the calculations in the spreadsheet. So I do this type of thing where I have you submit your data and then do the calculations for everybody's data, honestly, because it's one of the biggest things that I wish I had done in high school. That I majored in chemistry in college, and I got to college and they assumed I was good at spreadsheets when I got there, and I wasn't. So I try to give you guys some opportunities to practice and for me to teach you how to do things efficiently and effectively using spreadsheets, because they're a really, really powerful tool that you will use in all sorts of things, not just science. I use spreadsheets in my life a lot of the time. I mean, I'm a nerd, so I do that. But spreadsheets are really useful in a lot of different ways. Science is just one application. So what we've got in the 4 columns here is the data that you submitted from your lab. So this is not everybody's data, but it's what I had when I decided to film this video. And it's a bunch of trials, so it's enough. Right now we have 9 trials worth of data for ammonium nitrate. So the sheets down the bottom here are named by which solute they are. So this sheet is ammonium nitrate. I've got 9 trials worth of data. I don't want to do the calculations 9 times. I want to put it into the spreadsheet once and let the spreadsheet do the rest of the work for me. So I'm going to show you how to do that most effectively. So I have it set up to kind of guide you through the process here in a similar sequence to what was given to you in the calculations instructions in your lab assignment. So it kind of follows those same steps in order. So the first thing we need to do is use the data to figure out the temperature change. So we're figuring out delta T for our solution in each case here. So delta T is always T final minus T initial. So what we want to do is identify where those things are in our spreadsheet. So just looking at this first row of data, T final was 16, T initial was 23. So I want to do 16 minus 23, but that's not how I'm going to enter it. I'm going to tell the spreadsheet where to find it. So when you want a spreadsheet to do a calculation for you, the first thing you should type into the cell is an equal sign. That tells the sheet it's going to do math when you hit enter. So instead of just typing in the numbers, I'm going to type in the cells. So T final is column D, and this particular piece of data is in row 2. So I'm going to tell the spreadsheet to look at cell D2, and from that I want to subtract the initial temperature, which is in column C, row 2. So I can just use a regular subtraction symbol, and a minus sign, C2. So I'm telling the spreadsheet, take whatever is in cell D2, subtract whatever is in cell C2. When I hit enter, it does that math for me, tells me that 16 minus 23 is -7, which you certainly could have done on your own. But what this now allows us to do is copy and paste all the way down the column. So the fastest way to do that is if you see this little square on the bottom right-hand corner of my cell, I can grab that square, click and drag down to every cell I want to copy that to. So note that this was using D2 and C2. As it moves down the rows, it moves down where it's taking the data from. So if we look at the formula for the next cell, which is up here, we have D3 minus C3. So it's going down to the next row and doing that subtraction for us. So we can do all of these in one fell swoop. We just copy and paste that first cell all the way down the column. It does all of the math for us. So moving on to the next one is the mass of the solution. So the mass of the solution as a whole is the solute plus the solvent. We have mass of solute over here and the volume of water, but luckily for us, the density of water is 1 gram per milliliter. So the volume in milliliters is going to be the same as the mass in grams. So we can just take this as the mass. We don't really need to do anything to it, and add these two things together. So for this one, we just want to add B2 and A2, the volume of the solvent plus the solvent plus the solute. So again, we start with an equal sign, B2 plus A2. It adds those two things together, 44.04. And again, we can click on this little square on the bottom right of the cell, click and drag down to the rest of the rows that we want to do that same calculation for. And now we're good to go. We have the mass of the solution for all of those 9 trials. So heat transfer of the solution, we're calculating Q here is going to be the mass of the solution times the specific heat times the temperature change. So there are a few things we need to look at here. So we're calculating Q equals mc delta T. M is the mass of the solution, is what we just calculated in F2. We're going to multiply that times the specific heat. You were told in the instructions to use the same specific heat as water, which is 4.184. And then we're going to multiply that by the temperature change, which is what we calculated in column E. So now this gives us the heat transfer of the solution. Again, click and drag on that little square to copy it down the column. And we have the heat transfer of the solution in each of these trials. Heat transfer of the solute, this is just applying the first law of thermodynamics. We know that any heat transfer from the solution must have come from the solvent or gone into, solute, or gone into the solute. So this is just going to be equal and opposite to what we just calculated. So we just need to throw a negative sign in front of G2 is the cell where we just were. And then copy and paste again down that column rather. Went one too far. We were doing our work in joules, but our enthalpy calculation, we ultimately want to be in kilojoules. So this is just the metric conversion to kilojoules if we pay attention to the units that were given in the header here. So to convert from joules to kilojoules is just dividing by 1,000. So we can take the number we just had, divide it by 1,000 to get the heat transfer in kilojoules. Copy and paste to our other data points. For moles of solute, this is just going to be a mass to mole conversion. So we'll need to use the mass of our solute, which is all the way back here in column A, and divide that by the molar mass, which you'll need to figure out for each of the different solutes. For ammonium nitrate, molar mass is 80.043, but that will change for the different sheets, for the different solutes that we used. And we can copy and paste again for all of the different trials. And then enthalpy is our delta H, is just the heat transfer per mole of solute. So we have heat transfer and moles, so we just need to divide those things. So heat transfer was column I, moles was column J, and there is our enthalpy. So the last thing you should do when you have a bunch of different trials like this is take the average. So we always want to average at the very end, which is why using a spreadsheet is important, because we need to completely do out this calculation for every single trial individually and then average our final answer. So to do that, I have a little box set up down here for where I want to input my average. We start with the equal sign. And then we can just type in the word average, and that will tell the spreadsheet to take the average. There are all sorts of different functions you can do that are built in. Average is one that we'll use quite a lot. After you type in average, it kind of shows you up here what the format is going to be, which is really nice. that after you type average in parentheses, you want to tell it what cells to take the average of. So we're going to need to type an open parentheses, and then you can either type in the cell range, or I will usually just click and drag to select the cell range. So if I want to take the average of these, it's going to be K2 to K10. So you can just type this in, but clicking and dragging, I find I'm less likely to make a mistake, get the answer I want. Then we close parentheses, hit enter, and it calculates the average of all of our values for us. So in just a few minutes, we were able to run these calculations on these 9 trials of data. You'll have even more than that to work with, but it won't take you any additional time because you're just copying and pasting the same formulas all the way down the column for as many trials as you have. You could do the data for hundreds of trials in just a couple minutes, as we just did here.